Pasha Paroh, YN7. Thank you for tuning. All right, give me a second here. What we're doing is we're going to be continuing with the what you can call the atmosphere series. Give me 1 second. And what we're going to be proving today is that time is an emotion. And then we're going to expand upon that, beyond that further. All right, so let's get into it. First of all, let's start with what are we talking about when we say emotion? All right, so emotion is agitation or tumult. All right, so when you look at what agitation is, to agitate is to move to and fro, frequentive form of agree, or AGERE, which is to drive, lead, or do. Okay, so to move to and fro is agitate. To move to and fro, or like this, however you want to do it. We're talking about a sine wave is included in that process. All right, so emotion, again, to agitate or tumult. All right, so let's get back into the CIA document that we're reviewing for the gateway and continue with where we're at there. Give me a moment to pull this up for you guys. All right, there you have it. Let me make this a little larger for you. Okay. All right, so where we stopped last time is time and space dimension. I wanted to make that the starting point for this next one so we can go into this deep dive. Okay, so time and space. Up to this point, our discussion on the gateway process has been relatively simple and easy to follow, right? So this is pulling this from the document here. So now begins the fun. All right, let's get into this. So gateway involves more than just perception of those aspects of the Universal Hologram, which can be accessed in the dimension of time and space. All right. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So to explain how and why human consciousness can be brought to transcend the limitations of time, space, is the next task we must address. To do this, we must first appreciate what time and space are in order to understand how the dimension that they constitute can be transcended. All right. So the next line says, physicists define time as a measurement of energy or force in motion. In other words, it is a measurement of change. So if emotion is energy in motion, as some like to say, now you see why they can say that, because time is an emotion. All right, so you got sadness, you got all this stuff, you got acceptance, you got fear, you got peace, you got enlightenment, and then you got time. All right, which is one thing that the wasn't broke down on in the Life Vibe series. So we're gonna add time as an emotion. You got to consider that now. So, however, in order for energy to be in motion, it must first be limited in some way within the confines of some sort of vibratory pattern, so that its confinement gives it the capacity for being contained at a specific location. So basically, what it's saying is that the energy has to be put into a space beyond the absolute that they call it here later on, or from another dimension, so to speak. We'll get into it. I'll break it down for you here. All right, so which is distinguishable from other locations. All right, so however, in order for energy to be in motion, it must first be limited in some way within the confines of some sort of vibratory pattern, so that its confinement gives it the capacity for being contained at a specific location, which is distinguishable from other locations. And they have that as in parentheses in space there. All right. So to me, I see this as this is the description of reducing from the omnipresence capability that we have to the dumbing down effect, or the dumbing down process. All right. This is what that means to me. It's like you want to lower your frequency from being omnipresent to being, that's yeah. So energy, continuing here, energy which is not confined is force without limit, without dimension, without limits of form. It is infinity. Okay, let's do that again. Because see, now you see why I'm starting to see why I've always been in touch or in tune with infinity, the equation, not the variable. So energy, which is not confined, is force without limit, without dimension, without the limits of form. It is infinity. Cannot move because there is nothing beyond infinity, and is therefore outside of the dimensions of time. See, it is also beyond space because that concept implies that a specific energy form is limited to a specific location and is absent from other locations. But if energy is in the state of infinity, there are no boundaries, no here, no differentiate from there, or to differentiate from there, no sense of area. Energy in infinity means energy uniformly extended without limit. Okay? So check this out here. It has no beginning, no end, no location. It is conscious force, the fundamental, primal power of existence without form, a state of infinite being. Energy in infinity is said to be completely at rest and therefore cannot generate holograms so long as it remains utterly inactive. Now, what I have here is this reminds me of voltage. Voltage being the potential difference. Energy doesn't flow until the connection of two bridges, right? And also, this completely at rest is just like the flow in a pipeline. Whether that pipeline is the water in your sink, you know what I mean? It's there. It's at full pressure. It's at full force. Just like your light switch to your light bulb if you're wanting to light a lamp. You know, we talking about lighting lasers, but if you're still lighting lamps, that energy, that circuit, that power line, it all has energy in it, waiting to flow, but it's there at capacity, but it's not moving. As soon as you open it, the flow can begin. So that think about that as being the omnipresence. So it's everywhere, it's coexisting, it's filling that whole space. Unless there's like air in the lines or something like that, right? But otherwise, that water pressure is filling the whole space. It's taking up the whole space. This is why you hear Bruce Lee saying, be like water. All right? So, now that that's on the table. Therefore, it cannot generate holograms. So it retains its inherent capacity and for consciousness in that it can receive and passively perceive holograms generated by energy and motion out in the various dimensions which make up the created universe, but it cannot be perceived by consciousness operating in the active universe. So now you see why the things on this realm that we're on can only operate with other things traditionally without practice, only operate with things on this realm. Everything vibrates within a certain frequency range on this so-called earth. Okay. Where we at here? Yeah. So energy in a state of inactive infinity is termed by physicists as energy in its absolute state, or simply the absolute. Between the absolute and the material universe in which we experience our physical existence are various intervening dimensions to which human consciousness in altered states of being may gain access. Theoretically, human consciousness may continue to expand the horizons of its perceptual capability until it reaches the dimension of the absolute, at which point perception stops, because the absolute generates no holograms of or about itself. This is why y'all, many of them can't get there, because they're too busy being egomaniacs in some way, shape, or form. All right. So intervening dimensions. Okay. So since the absolute is conscious energy in infinity, i.e. without boundaries, it occupies every dimension to include the time and space dimension in which we have our physical existence, but we cannot perceive it. It overlays everything, as do many of the intervening gradients or dimensions through which the energies of the universe pass on their way to and from their home in the state of infinity, the absolute. To enter these intervening dimensions, human consciousness must focus with such intense coherence that the frequency of the energy pattern which comprises that consciousness, i.e. brainwave output, can accelerate to the point where the resulting frequency pattern, if displayed on an oscilloscope, would look virtually like a solid line. Remember, we talked about the difference between the lamp and the laser focus, right? Achievement of this state of altered consciousness sets the state for perception, or set the stage for perception of non-time space dimensions, because of the operation of a principle in physics known as the Planck's distance, if I'm pronouncing that right. So this is the aspect of quantum mechanics which applies to the fact that any oscillating frequency, such as a brainwave, reaches 2 points of complete rest, which constitute the boundaries of each individual oscillation, the movement up or down, or whether it's left or right, or whether it's like this, however you want to, say it. So without these points of rest, an oscillating wave pattern would be impossible, since the points of rest are required to permit the energy to change direction and thus continue vibrating between rigid limitations. But it is also true that when, for an infinitesimally brief instant, that energy reaches one of its 2 points of rest, it clicks out of time and space and joins the infinity. All right, we'll see that area on the next page in the diagram. So think about it. It clicks out and joins the infinity. So that's where you can black out for a moment. Like in one of the last videos when I said, hey, when someone asks you a question, right? And you go, let me think about that. And where do you go? Where are you going at that moment? Where do you disappear to in your consciousness, in your brain, to retrieve that intel, that information? Okay, so let's continue. The critical step of time and space occurs when the speed of oscillation drops below 10 to the negative 33 centimeters per second. That's Planck's distance, right? So this is why, as you can see there, this is why I say we put others in a microwave. When we come with that higher vibrating frequency, right? Like, okay, so of course you could vibrate faster and have the same bandwidth, that's gonna mean you're gonna have more energy inputted. But if you take and narrow the focus of the oscillation, you can vibrate faster with the same energy, right? So you narrow that beam down from the lamp to the laser. This is microwave energy. This is why I'm saying you're cooking them. Even before I could, share the scientific explanation with you, this is why I was saying this. You're cooking them, all right? So, to use the words of Bentov, quantum mechanics tell us that when distance goes below Planck's distance, which is 10 to the negative 33 centimeters, we enter, in effect, a new world. What's that new world? This is that new level of consciousness, right? Beyond, you're going into the realms of other dimensions and stuff, beyond what we see and perceive and know, quote unquote, here. So, to return to our case in point, the human consciousness wave pattern reaches such height frequency that the pattern of clickouts comes so close together that there is virtually continuity in it. This is why when you reach a certain level, you can almost always be in this state. You know what I mean? Or we talked about once you get entry level, you can do it like 15 minutes or so, they say, at a time. So imagine once you get to the point where you're doing this almost all day long, or at least all the time that you're woke, or until you say, okay, let me go play a video game or something dumb like that. So that, I ain't gonna say it's dumb, but something to take your mind off actually being in tune, right? All right, so back to it. Then a portion of that consciousness is actually postulated to establish and maintain its information collection function in those dimensions located between time and space and the absolute. So basically, once you plug in and turn up to a certain frequency, like you're always plugged in, what are you connected to full time like that? Is it bullshit? Is it negativity? Is it anything positive or productive for society? You see what I mean? This is why like attracts like. All right, so let's continue. Thus, as the almost continuous click-out pattern establishes itself in continuous phase at speeds below Planck's distance, but before reaching that state of total rest, human consciousness passes through the looking glass of time and space after the fashion of Alice beginning her journey into Wonderland. The gateway experience with its associated hemisync technique is apparently designed, if used systematically and patiently, to enable human consciousness to establish a coherent pattern of perception in those dimensions where speeds below Planck's distance apply. This holds true irrespective of whether the individual is exercising his consciousness while in the physical body, or whether he is doing so after having separated that consciousness from the physical body, i.e. the so-called out-of-body state mentioned earlier. You see? All right, now let's get into why it's important to go outside the body instead of being inside the body. It's a lot of efficiency. Us Virgos, we all about efficiency, so let's talk about this. So, subatomic particles is this category here, or is this section of review. The behavior of subatomic particles provide an interesting example of the phenomenon of clicking out, discussed in the preceding paragraphs. In an article prepared for Science Digest magazine, Dr. John Gliedman mentions the way in which subatomic particles communicate with each other once their energy fields become entrained as a result of colliding with each other. All right. So the communication concerned is, of course, postulated to be occurring during the click out phase in the oscillation of the energy fields comprising the subatomic particles concerned. It is this cause which accounts, right? Keep that in mind. It is this cause which accounts for the cross communication at what in terms of time and space velocities would seem to involve speeds in excess of light. instantaneous. Okay, so in relativity, in reality, excuse me, Einstein's theory of relativity is not being invalidated, but rather the communication concerned is taking place outside the dimension of time and space to which the theory of relativity is strictly confined. See, this is why you gotta get rid of the limitations. Let's just talk the time and space relativity is gravity and flesh versus being in the infinite. Okay? Specifically, Dr. Gleeman tells quantum theory postulates a kind of long-range Siamese twin effect whenever two subatomic particles collide and then go their different ways, even when the particles are halfway across the universe from each other. And it says they instantaneously respond to each other's actions. So this is what my note here is. This is why there's a study showcasing the fastest way to communicate would be through hydrogen in the universe. Okay? It is the most abundant and can be synced as such described here. So they can actually send, I came across that many years ago where they were talking about how if the quote unquote ETs were to really be trying to communicate, they wouldn't send like a beam across space or a signal. They would do it subatomically, and they would most likely use hydrogen because that's the most abundant thing in the supposed universe. The sun is supposedly made of mostly hydrogen. We're 70+% water. That's mostly hydrogen, H2O, right? So the water and the earth, you know what I mean? So they would send a message subatomically through the frequencies of the hydrogen atom itself. They wouldn't waste their time sending some radio signal across the damn galaxy. You know what I mean? All right, so let's get back to this. So now, aside from that, communicating across space, can you say soul ties? Can you think about telepathy? Have you ever actually thought of someone right before they called? That type of stuff, okay? So let's review that. Let's go back. Specifically, Dr. Gleeman's, if I'm saying that right, tells us quantum theory postulates a kind of long-range Siamese twin effect whenever two subatomic particles collide and then go their different ways. All right. Even when the particles are halfway across the universe, so the world ain't nothing, that distance ain't nothing compared to that, from each other, it says they instantaneously respond to each other's actions. This is why you can, people like us can feel what others are thinking, what they're feeling, and then no matter how much they try to hide it from us, they can't hide it from us. It's why you wind up just leaving most people alone, because they think they're something that they're not. So, and in so doing, they violate relativity's ban on faster than light velocities. So basically what they're saying is that relativity says that nothing should be going faster than the speed of light, but if you got this instantaneous communication, it's definitely moving faster than the speed of light. So this is something that is not, they're saying, not violating the law of relativity, because it's actually happening outside of the jurisdiction, so to speak, of relativity existed. So indeed, regarding attempts to quantify what is known about the behavior of energy in dimensions apparently outside of time and space, Bentov speaks about courageous physicists who are working on hypothetical particles called tachyons, I'll say. I may be pronouncing that wrong, so we'll continue, which can move at speeds higher than light. The speed of tachyons start just above the speed of light and ranges all the way into infinite velocities. Okay, so dimensions in between. Now that we have postulated the legitimacy of the assertion that the energy forms which compose consciousness can move beyond the time and space dimension, we need to turn our attention to the energy forms which inhabit those dimensions between time and space and the absolute. So here is the little diagram drawing what they call the click out area. See, so if you look here, right, this is where it's saying that the portion of oscillating energy pattern in time and space. So here's the limitations of time and space, but the oscillations go beyond that in the up and down areas, or if this is left and right, depending on how you look at it, from the 10 to the negative 33 all the way to infinity and back. Okay, so that's a huge area there. Now we're going to talk about why this is important, because if you're starting off in the flesh, let's say the flesh is dead center, right, and you want to go this way, well, you got a far distance to go, because being in the middle, you're the farthest away you could be from either one of these points. So when people be like, oh, I don't get why when people be saying, oh, what do people mean by vibrate at your highest frequency, right? Your highest self, you know what I mean? Well, what that does for you in reality, if you look back at this this opportunity here, this visual, is that if you get closer to one of these sides, then you'll have to travel less distance. I'll mention this in full detail later in a note, but since we're looking at the graph here or the display, it'll help it make sense later when I say it. So let's go over it. So if you were here in the middle, right, and you go this far, and let's say that's 10 hours, well, you're only going to get this far. You're going to have this little bit of time to spend in there before you have to go back, okay? However, if you move, just like to any other, if you like shopping and you move to the mall or move outside of the mall, you'll be right here, so that when you go the same distance, you'll be able to go, all the way out to here, all the way out to infinity, or at least you'll be able to go in here and spend a much more time with the same amount of energy before you have to return. All right, so very important to have in consideration. So in so doing, we may better perceive the form that reality assumes whenever we encounter it in those intermediate dimensions. In this context, Bentov tells us that the causal relationship between events breaks down, movement becomes jerky rather than smooth, time and space become grainy and chunky. Perhaps a piece of space can be transverse or traversed by a particle in a matter in any direction without necessarily being synchronized with a piece of time. In short, a pair of events will occur in either time or space, the pair not being connected casually but by random fluctuations. Now, I know that sounds like a lot to some of y'all, but let me tell you what it is, okay? How would you describe your memories? You've heard me ask you this question before. When you close your eyes right now and think about your first car, where was that memory at? Where did it live a moment ago? Not only that, but you can almost sit there, you can almost feel yourself moving, traveling down your favorite road, hands on the wheels. You can see the interior of it. However, it's distorted, isn't it? It's almost, that's why we look at the people with the photographic memories, like when we were talking about autism in the last video with Nkichi. That's something extraordinary to have a photographic memory, to be so clear, smooth, lack of graining, lack of distortion. But for us, the rest of us, we see it. It's not 4K, it's not 8K. You know what I mean? That's not PlayStation 5 graphics you're looking at, but you see it, you hear it, you almost can actually get the whole sensation of that memory. All right? This is how I would describe that for you in translation, okay? Movements become jerky rather than smooth. Time and space become grainy and or chunky. How would you describe your memories? Okay, so what Bentov means is that inside the dimension of time and space, where both concepts apply in a generally uniform way, there is a proportional relationship between them. All right? A certain space can be covered by energy moving in either particle or wave form in a certain time, assuming a specific velocity virtually anywhere in the time-space universe. This is why you got the conflicts and statements of, an atom, the electrons move around it on a plane, like I remember, calling an atom a galaxy, or it looks like a galaxy, it looks like an atom. And this is why you get the other people on the other side or some other whatever side. They're saying, no, the electrons are in a shell. They're at all these different points at the same time, and they form a shell in these different random layers, blah, 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 right? All right, so a certain space can be covered by energy moving in either particle or wave form in a certain time, assuming the specific velocity virtually anywhere in the time-space universe. The relationship is neat and predictable. However, in the intermediate dimensions, when we go in between, when we go beyond the time and space shit, right, the limitations imposed on energy to put into a state of oscillating motion are not uniform as they are in our physical universe. A myriad of various distortions and incongruities are thus likely to be encountered, such that our nice, neat assumptions concerning the relationship between time and space as we know it in this dimension does not apply. And this is why it's so important to admit to yourself you don't know what you don't know, and be open to receive new information and new material from the universe, the Most High, your higher self, other people, nature, whatever. Okay? Same as above, so below. As left, so right. Right? Okay. Now, but even more important, access is open to both the past and future when the dimension of current time and space is left behind. See, all time affects all time all the time. You know what I mean? For those that haven't heard that before, all time affects all time all the time. And that's something that I bring up when I'm explaining to people how, because a lot of people feel like, oh, the past controls the future because this happened in the past. These are my options in the present, which was the future at the time of the past, etc., etc., etc. The past controls the future, but energy oscillates, which is what I said. And now here's the scientific proof. Energy oscillates, so it's a two-way street. So if we're going to say that the past controls the future, we got to accept that the future controls the past, which is why no matter what position you're in, you are exactly where you're supposed to be based on who you're supposed to become. And what also has bearing on who you're supposed to become is you, in part. Okay. You wanted to do some things before you got here. That's what we signed up for. We came down here into this ultra realistic Grand Theft Auto game, and we're doing we're living out our contracts basically, right? With these higher frequencies and all this stuff, overseeing certain situations of our life. This is why it's called free will, because the moment you decide to change your mind, and you can change the course of your life based on where you're saying you go, what you believe your limitations are, etc., etc., etc. All right, let's continue, because I'm gonna get through this, and I'm gonna even show you like a tarot card that ties into this, because what we're gonna show you in another diagram in shortly, and we'll go over that and see how all of this stuff is saying the same thing. And you got people arguing about how they believe science, but astrology and the tarot is devil worship. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man, y'all get the fuck out of here. So look, let's go. All right, with all that gaslighting and limitation and shit, based on your projections and wanting people to conform to your church instead of being whole, All right, so next section, special status, out of body experience. All right, so although human consciousness can, with enough practice, move beyond the dimension of time and space and interface with other energy systems in other dimensions, the entire process is applicably enhanced or appreciably enhanced if that consciousness can be detached in large measure from the physical body, therefore or before such interface is attempted. This is why, since the video on egomaniacs or egomania and the ways I said it before, I'm saying you're gonna go inside yourself long enough, talk about your heart, your mind, my neck, my back, whatever, right? And then you're gonna go and realize if if it's in your cards, you're going to realize that what you're looking for is actually outside of you. This is why I've been saying that even before I had the scientific data to prove scientifically this is what I know, because of the time I spent studying me, the time I spent studying the universe, the time I spent studying other people. This is why I could come up with these conclusions, because I'm tapped into the fucking infinity. All right, this is why it's fucking lonely, because we are tapped into the infinity, and we got all these people trying to grab to these little boxes and portions and areas of infinity, talking about this is where you should be, and we're like, yo, that's nothing. I'm everywhere. I'm omnipresent. I see it all. I build on equations, not variables. All right, let's continue. So, once an individual becomes proficient in the technique of out-of-body movement, and then reaches the point where he is able to break out of time and space while out of his body or her body, he or she gains the advantage of clicking out, part of his or her enhanced consciousness, while starting from a base located much closer to the dimension with which he wishes to communicate. See, this is what I was telling you earlier about, if you want to be closer to shopping, move closer to your favorite stores or shops. If you want to be closer to work, move closer to where you work at. So here it goes in the next section here, next part. And in other words, since he is starting from a point much higher up, to use an analogy from the time-space context, that part of his consciousness involved in clicking out will have that much more time to interact in dimensions beyond time-space, because less time is required to traverse the intervening layers, or it's the less distance you got to travel to get there, basically. All right, and that's what I was saying here, like I mentioned to you earlier while we were looking at the graph. Okay, so moreover, once the individual is able to project his consciousness beyond time and space, that consciousness would logically tend to entrain its frequency output with the new energy environment to which it is exposed, therein greatly enhancing the extent to which the individual's altered consciousness may be further modified to achieve a much heightened point of focus and much refined oscillating patterns. See, this is why you gotta get out of the body. You're dumbed down. Okay, so see here, let's talk. This is my little breakdown for you. It's the osmosis factor. The more time you spend in an environment, the more you become it, and it becomes you. So the true dumbing down is to keep you grounded on lower frequencies. This is why I repel that whole come down to our level shit, because that's atrophy to me. It's like the longer I spend there, the more weaker I get at being able to go and maintain transcending beyond time and space, because you're not putting that work in to those not putting those reps in anymore. I'm down here, and then people don't understand that it's not personal. And then no matter how much time you may spend or energy you may spend trying to invest in them, everybody doesn't want to join you, or doesn't see the value of going beyond themselves and their egotistical behaviors and coming up to a higher level. They just rather talk shit about you because you didn't come down to some fucking level that they could understand you on, because that's not where you belong. It's that simple. But you're comfortable there, so you want company, because misery loves company. So, remember, also in this section, remember the laser versus the lamp. And this is the microwave energy again. It can't be seen the same as regular light. Okay, so when you put your lamp up, they say, oh, it lights up the dark, right? When you shine that laser on your 4-5 or your 9 across the room, you don't see it except for where the dot hits the wall. Now, you could put interference in there, like smoke or something like that, fog, and you'll be able to see the beam of light hitting off the particles, but otherwise you don't see it in the time and space that we're in. This is why they don't see that we actually connect with them. This is why they feel like you don't understand what they saying to you, because they can't see your light because it's a different frequency. This is also why they feel like they can hide from us what others don't see about them. You see, because they're used to being around people who can only see the lamp, while we're seeing and able to interpret the whole fucking infinity. This is why I be tired. But we're growing in numbers of the right people. We're reaching the critical mass that we need to do this. And when all that exists is of this energy and frequency, there will be amazing things possible. So, as a result, a self-reinforcing process should ensue, whereby the further consciousness in out-of-body state can be projected beyond the time and space dimension. The more its level of energy output would be enhanced, thus promoting the potential for still further travel. So you can go all the way to infinity with this shit, right? So let's check this out. So the egomaniac projection is within. See, this is why they don't like us, and it's a lot of different, ways that people show this behavior and don't realize that they're demonstrating egomania. All right, which is why, when you say you want to separate from them, they feel like there's something wrong with you, because of course they're not. They're. You see what I'm saying? All right. So the egomaniac projection is within. They go deeper into lower vibrations, because to go deeper inside yourself, you have to go, into more density, right? You're going into the matter, into the flesh. And then once you go deep enough, you start to arrive at the atomic level. And then once you get into the atomic level, you start to go back into a emptiness. Now, once you connect with the emptiness of the space of the subatomic particles, you're actually now rerouting or going through the wormhole, so to speak, back into the whole collective consciousness of the universe. So what I'm saying is, if you just started saying to yourself, let me not go inside because what I want is not there. Let me focus on going to the atmosphere, like Pasha put in the song. Maybe he was trying to tell us something when he wrote this song, like he do all his other songs. Maybe there'll be some success for me there that I'm not achieving, and then people won't have to spend 2, 4, 5, 6 hours a day meditating, because you'll transcend time and space. And like I mentioned in the Egomania video, you'll get those same 2, 4, 6, 8 hours, but in 2 to 6 seconds. Trust me, when you start doing this, your friend count is gonna go. So, all right, where we at here? So our projection is beyond time and space into the higher frequencies. This is why I'm always speaking of infinity and the equation, not the variables and lower frequencies. Love of the variable, right? The self, the flesh. Okay. So then for this one, this is what we were talking about earlier with the destination being closer. So it takes you less time to get there, less energy. So you get more time to spend actually enjoying those levels beyond the 10 to the negative 33rd. Okay. Excuse me. Centimeters. So the tentative conclusion to be drawn is that the out-of-body state may be regarded as an extremely effective way of accelerating the process of enhancing consciousness and of interfacing with dimensions beyond time-space. If the practitioner of the gateway technique has a choice of concentrating on achieving and exploiting the out-of-body experience, as opposed to concentrating his full efforts on expanding his consciousness exclusively from a physical base, the former would appear to promise much faster and more impressive success than does the latter. Like, you're spending so much energy in here, those people, that by the time you actually get there, you tired. You can't. This is why certain people can't build with us. This is why you have a conversation with certain people and they frustration, their irritation with you is because they tired. Because you're talking. This is why they feel like you talking down to them, because they're not coming up to your level, and then the frequency you on, it fatigues them. So they see you as the problem instead of themselves needing work. All right, let's continue. So absolute in perspective, right? So it may be helpful at this point to pause and recap, right? So we dig this recap. The major aspects of our intellectual journey from time-space to the realm of absolute, we have spoken at some length concerning the incredibly complex hologram, which is created by the intersection of energy patterns generated by the totality of all dimensions of the universe, time-space included. We have noted that our minds constitute energy fields which interact with various aspects of this hologram to deduce information which is ultimately processed through the left hemisphere of our brains to reduce it to a form that we employ with the process we call thinking. It moves over to the right side and becomes action. Okay? We have implied that this hologram is the finite embodiment in active energy from, or form, of the infinite consciousness of the absolute. It is the title we assign to that vast pool of energy in a state of perfect rest over which the physical universe is layered and from whence it comes. Incidentally, to describe this, Bentoff uses the analogy of a very deep sea, comparing the still depths of the ocean area, right, to the dimension of the absolute, while assigning the storm-tossed waves above to represent the physical universe with which we are familiar. See, that to me is the difference between the equation, which is all of it included. So when you look at the whole ocean from like what they tell you is space, we're not going to argue are they really in space orbiting or not. But when you look at the ocean from what they call space, you don't necessarily see the waves. You just see the blue ocean. That's the whole equation, so to speak. Now, when you get down and start worrying about the fucking variables, you worry about every little ripple, and you concentrate on that and say, oh my God, oh me, wow, boop, 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 I'm bopping around. You see what I'm saying? All right. So the slightly agitated currents, right? What we say agitate was to move to and from, okay? So the slightly agitated currents of the sea to be found in between the turbulent surface and the totally still depths represent energy in the process of either going into rest or coming out of rest. So that's all about approaching infinity or leaving infinity. Some of your old heads said you don't know if you're coming or going sometimes, right? See what I'm saying? All right, now let's get into this. From Big Bang to Taurus. So working from the widely accepted Big Bang theory, Bentoff presents a conceptual model to depict the process of time-space evolution, the relative position of the Universal Hologram. The hologram is often called a torus because it is thought to have the overall shape of an immense self-contained spiral, right? Depending on what angle you looked at, it'll be different. You'll see some examples shortly. So, basing his thesis on recent studies concerning the distribution of quasars, quasi-stellar objects, and operating on the premise that in the universe, similar process tends to mirror images of larger ones, right? As above, so below. You got that. I.e., the pattern of electrons around the nucleus of an atom mirrors the way planets orbit their suns and so on. This is why I had this highlighted because, like I said, when I remember being in young school and saying that, and like people were laughing at me, and like, you know, people still laugh at me when I talk because they don't know shit. All right, excuse me. So Bentov postulates the following scenario. All right, taking his cue from the observed capability of quasars to eject enormously concentrated beams of matter from their interiors in controlled non-concentric versions of the Big Bang. Remember, lamp versus laser beam, right? Okay, so he envisions or envisages a similar process occurring in the generation of the universe. See Exhibit 4, we'll get to that in a moment. So nothing that those galaxies located to the north, or excuse me, noting that those galaxies located to the north of our own galaxy are moving away faster than those located to the south, and that those to the east and west are demonstrably more distant. Bentov regards this as substantive evidence that the jet of matter which expanded into our universe has turned back upon itself, eventually forming an ovoid or egg-shaped. Okay, so you guys have heard this type of stuff in other cultures and theories and mythology, and I'm going to show you one from Egypt real soon that I'm sure you'll recognize. Okay, and I have a tarot card that has it on there too, so that's how we got the tarot involved. Stay tuned, we're getting there. We're almost there. So, where are we at here? So he sees matter in our universe entering the ovoid pattern following ejection from a nucleus composed of extremely compressed energy through the quote-unquote white hole. Now, listen to that description. It's starting to sound like an atom again, right? So he sees matter in our universe entering the ovoid pattern following ejection from a nucleus composed of extremely compressed energy through a quote-unquote white hole. At the end of its trip to the far end of the ovoid, he sees it departing via a black hole. Okay, so it comes out the white hole, goes on its little trip, and then goes into the black hole. Okay, so in such a model, time is observed to be a measure of the change which occurs as energy evolves into new, more complex forms as it progresses along the distance from the white hole, or basically its birth, right, into this portion of time and space that's separate from the rest of the universe, the omnipresent. See, this is why time is an emotion, because when you're in the absolute, there is no movement. You don't feel, you don't experience the time, because time is about motion, and it's trapped in that space where the energy is everywhere, like the water hose or the sink faucet. So there's no free will to move. We're gonna get into that in a moment. Let me not spoil it for you, but this is where you get into this situation from. Okay, so in such a model, time is observed to be a measure of the change which occurs as energy evolves into new, more complex forms as it progresses along the distance from the white hole side of the nucleus around the shell of its cosmic egg until it enters back in the black hole. Okay? So in other words, as energy expelled from infinity and confined within limits by the consciousness of the absolute achieves form and motion following ejection from the white hole at the top of the egg, time begins as a measure of the cadence of this evolutionary movement as quote-unquote reality goes around the shell of the egg on its journey to the black hole at the far end. You see? And this is where you get a circuit with the sky is complete, a nuid coeptus, the all-seeing eye, you know, all of this stuff, right? So let me show you this real quick. Now, this is pretty interesting because, you know, like I told you, I got the all-seeing eye, I got Anuit coeptus, because there's three under. I told you before. There's some research that I pulled up some basic stuff here to showcase it on a generic sense. Excuse me. But there's he proved the Anuit coeptus means three translations. He approves of our undertaking. He favors our mission. And then the rarest one was a circuit with the skies complete. All right. Now think about that for a moment, because they're going to say it differently here. And I want you to think about what they're actually saying based on what we just went over. All right. So here it says, what does Anuit coeptus mean? Anuit coeptus, or Anuit coeptus, depending on how you write it, can be translated in several ways. The official translation is given by the U.S. State Department, U.S. Mint, and U.S. Treasury is he, and they have capital G-O-D in parentheses, has favored our undertakings. Other translations include he, she, it favors our undertakings or missions. And then this is the cool way what do I want to say? The cool way they hide this third one that I really appreciate and value the translation for, but it's the one that says a circuit with the sky is complete. So if using a painfully incorrect translation through a service like Google Translate, it means signals enterprise. Okay, so signals enterprise, a circuit with the sky is complete. All right. Now, what's interesting about Anuit, when you get into Anuit here, right, is Anuit coeptus a reference to Nuit, the sky goddess? So however some believe, there's also a reference to Nuit or Nut, the sky goddess of ancient Egypt. This is supported by the way Anuit coeptus arches over the top of the pyramid, right on the back of the dollar, which is a phallic symbol, they say. A direct analogy to the Egyptian symbolism of Sep, or God, and Nut. Okay, so what is they talking about? This is what they're talking about. You've seen this before. Now, look at this, right? And then let's go back and look at this. Wait, we didn't get there yet. This is what's coming up next. And you see this? This is the white hole. This is the quote unquote nucleus. You come out the white hole, which is like the Big Bang. There's going to be light. There's going to be fire. When you come out the birth canal, unless you're born in the dark, you're going towards the light. Don't go towards the light, Carrie. You know what I mean? So you're going towards the light. Boom, you pop out. And this is like the whole reality here. So you want to call it our galaxy or universe, whatever. And you go around this course. You could maybe go this way or you could go that way. But you go around the little path, the little nut. Kind of looks like a walnut or something, right? From the side. Kind of looks like a green pepper, right? Now, if you cut that in half, ain't this what you got? Okay. And then you go back into what they teach you is the black hole that sucks everything in, and that's why nothing escapes it. In the absence of light don't escape it, and that's why it's black. Right? Boom. Then you go back into the absolute where you're into that like pipe of water waiting for someone to turn a spigot on so you can move. There's no free will in there. Everybody's like at the concert where you're all crammed up together and you can't move because there's so much, you can't do nothing. There's no free will. You can't move, right? But then once you come out here, boom, you're into quote unquote reality. You have free will here and choice for the energy, which is you on a higher level, to experience itself. This is where you get these terms and these descriptions from, because in the absolute, the energy is omnipresent. It's everywhere. It's filling all the space. It's taking the form of the whole of infinity, and there's no room to move around. There's no free will. There's no choice. Okay? See? Huh? And if you look at this, right, you know, you're looking at the whole spiral from the side, but don't you see in the core the double helix? What else got a double helix? All right. Let's get back to where we were. Time begins, reality moves back into the black hole. Okay, here's where we were. And then what I want to do is I want to show you this real quick. And maybe I'll show it to you now, and then we'll jump back on it at the end and do a review. So see, here's the Nefertari card for the world. And there's the nut. And we're going to review that real quick. It's 21. That's the card number. All right. See, this is why people be like, rah, 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 all this stuff. And I just be like, no, I'm not emotional. It's this. This is what we're really dealing with. And they're like, oh my God, how could you say that? Because you don't know what you're talking about. You're not connecting with what I'm saying. No, I totally get what you're saying. You're just at a lower vibration, or you're acting as a minority with it. You know what I mean? Which means like child. You don't yet understand. You don't yet comprehend certain things. It's not that people don't understand you. So it's just like what I said earlier on Facebook. It's not that a lot of people. It's not that this many people are fake. Like, it's one thing to say I'm just gonna be fake, right? That's a certain intent. Deception. That was the D word I was looking for earlier. However, what there is a good chunk of them is that they're just real incomplete. They're just real incomplete, and they don't realize it. And to us, being whole, being focused on the infinity, being attached to that omnipresence, that complete equation, that full of the infinity, we feel like they're fake, but they're just real incomplete in a lot of cases, and they don't know any better. Minority, like child. That's what minority means. Doesn't mean skin color. Okay, so now that we're this is why this channel was founded on etymology, because you can't reach a certain level of emotional intelligence or mental health without having the proper prerequisites or tools. All right, so let's continue here so we can get into the tarot, and then get you guys on your way, because I'm really glad to be able to provide this investment into you. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, like, all that stuff YouTube says you should do. Okay, so our place in time, right? So to observe this distribution of galaxies suggests that our particular universe is located near the top of the egg, at the point where matter begins to fall back in on itself, thus explaining the reason why the galaxies to the north are seen to be moving away more rapidly as they are caught up in the downturn of the stream of matter towards the far end of the cosmic egg. See the next page for the example. And this is why I be just, I be laughing at people. Like, there was this group that was some debate group, and they couldn't debate shit. Like, what they like to do is argue. There's a difference between debating and argue. You know what I mean? So when you say people couldn't live to be 1,000 years old, it's like, you got to understand, these ancient cultures were so much more advanced than what you think we are today, but because you believe, the same people that don't lie to you about everything else, that you believe that this is high tech and we're so far advanced, you can't fathom that they had technology and understanding beyond normal people's thought process. You know what I'm saying? Like, certain people just start to get the tip of the iceberg when they say things like, oh, the military progresses 20 years every 1 year that the gen pop, advances in technology. You know what I'm saying? Like, those people are just beginning to come into reality, what it actually is, So you got people saying that how, crude or primeval, that our ancestors were, because they want you to believe that they weren't more advanced than us, so that you won't realize that we're being dumbed down as a population, and that's why your ego's so blown up. But let's continue. All right, so layered over this cosmic egg is the absolute, which sustains the radiating nucleus from which the original jet of matter issued forth. As the stream of matter moves around the ovid towards its destination at the black hole, where it, and then we'll skip through this, the DNA and everything of the drawings, it will be reabsorbed into the radiating nucleus and then the absolute. It generates the interference pattern within the cosmic egg, which constitutes the universal hologram or torus. Just like the laser beam needed interference from the gas or smoke or something so that you could see it in this current realm or frequency that we're in. So since the torus is being simultaneously generated by matter in all the various phases of time, it reflects the development of the universe in the past, present, and future, as it would be seen from our particular perspective in one phase of time. By reflecting on this model, it becomes possible to see how human consciousness, brought to a sufficiently altered focus state, could obtain information concerning the past, present, and future, since all exist in the universal hologram simultaneously. Again, like I said earlier, the quote to remember this, make it real simple for you, is all time affects all time all of the time. Okay, so in the case of the future, because all of the consequences of the past and present can be seen coming together in the hologram, such that the future can be predicted or seen with total accuracy. See, that's why this is why my note here says this is why we the problem solvers. See, we enjoy solving problems because others aren't tapped into this frequency. They can't get on this level, so it frustrates them. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. We enjoy this because it's like, fuck, this is our PlayStation. Us going into the universe realm or dimension or other dimensions, that is our PlayStation. They you see what I'm saying? All right. So moreover, it is possible to see how the implosion of energy patterns would cross and recross to create the incredibly complex four-dimensional hologram or torus, the spiral shape in reflection of the multi-dimensional developing pattern of evolutions. All of the movements of the energies which comprise the universe leave their mark and hence tell their story throughout time. So here go the qualities of consciousness. We noted earlier the out-of-body state involves projection of a major proportion or portion of energy pattern that represents human consciousness, so that it may move either freely throughout the terrestrial sphere for purposes of information acquisition, or into other dimensions outside of time and space, perhaps to interact with other forms of consciousness within the universe. Y'all worried about being grounded. That's y'all stuck. Y'all stuck. Consciousness is the organizing and sustaining principle that provides the impetus and guidance to bring and keep energy in motion within a given set of parameters, so that a specific reality will result. It has to be in motion. When consciousness reaches a state of sophistication in which it can perceive itself, its own hologram, it reaches the point of self-cognition. Now we're back to where we started when we were defining these terms. And I think that was in the beginning of the Egomania video, or yeah. Okay? Or no, the beginning, the first atmosphere 1. All right? So if you want to follow up and review that to make sure if you're just starting off here, you can go back and catch up on that. Excuse me. So human beings have this form of elevated consciousness, as does the absolute. But in the case of the latter, it is a function of energy, and it's associated with quality of consciousness and infinity, omniscience, and omnipotence, and perceptual unity. When energy returns to the state of total rest within the absolute, it returns to the continuum of consciousness in the pool of limitless, timeless perception that resides there. Thus, the more complex an energy system in the material state, the more consciousness it possesses to maintain its reality. Can you say internet, AI, 5G? Any questions there? Want to see why they try to bring you into the quote unquote singularity and you up here letting them do it? So our consciousness, therefore, is that differentiated aspect of the universal consciousness that resides within the absolute. It accounts for the organization of the energy and the energy patterns which constitute our physical body, but is distinctly separate from and superior to it. Now this is crazy important. This is what I was saying about the difference between us and the egomaniacs. You gotta go outside of yourself. Let's read this again. It accounts for the organization of the energy patterns which constitute our physical body, but is distinctly separate from and superior to it. That's why I don't want to be. This is why I don't want to low vibe. It's not personal. It's not about you, egomaniac behavior. It's about me. I like the high fi. I like the high frequency. So since consciousness exists quite apart from and outside of reality, again, you got to get outside of yourself. Beyond the bounds of time and space, it, like the absolute, has neither beginning nor end. This is why I stay in the equation or the infinity. Because it's infinite. That's where there's no beginning or end. There is no limitations. There is no, well, what do you think about in this situation? Well, it all coexist together. No, you got to focus on this part, and then you got to do the rule. Fuck that. It's infinity. What part of that do you need help with? Let me know in the comments, and I can maybe expand on that for you. It's infinity. So reality has both a beginning and an end because it's bounded to within time space. Okay? But remember, we're going beyond reality, beyond the limitations to tap into the universal consciousness for these downloads. And you got people that are claiming they do this because it's cool and it's trendy and it sounds good, but nah. You can tell by their actions they don't really do this. You can tell by their response to your statements they don't really know this. When you're in a debate group and the admin tells you that her qualification for having a scientific conversation with you is because she got an admin badge, the fuck is that bullshit? Like, that's your qualification? You got a badge on Facebook? And you think now that makes you able to have a conversation with me? I don't put in 25 plus years of work studying this shit. You got an admin badge. Shut the fuck up. That's why you don't know shit now. You're worried about the wrong shit. So reality has both a beginning and an end because it is bounded within time and space. In other words, it is limited. But the fundamental quantum of energy and its associated consciousness is eternal. When reality ends, its constituent energy simply returns to infinity in the absolute. Consciousness and perspective, okay? So having ascertained that human consciousness is able to separate from physical reality and interact with other intelligences in other dimensions within the universe, and that it is both eternal and destined for ultimate return to the absolute, we are faced with the question, so what happens then? Since memory is a function of consciousness and therefore enjoys the same eternal character as the consciousness which accounts for its existence, it must be admitted that when consciousness returns to the absolute, it brings with it all the memories it has accumulated through the experience in reality. Now, what I want to key on here from my observation is, yes, but as stated, the energy in the current loop can only naturally be perceived by like energy or vibrations, or stuff vibing on, the same level. So my question to you all is, does this explain the so-called memory wipe at birth? Because once entering into the new dimension, when we come back in from the absolute, our total knowledge is not lost yet, disconnected, until we learn to reattach to the atmosphere. You see why the song, you need to get down with this shit? Like, this ain't, I don't do this for fun. I'm not doing this for likes. I'm doing this to help change the world. Because some people don't want to watch the video. So you give them this video. And some people don't like this video. They'd rather listen to the music video. But y'all too busy doing other shit that don't even matter. At the end of the day, when we were talking about business and the bond of having business and customers and stuff, that shit is the only thing that depends on that is you. Like, is your success as far as what you're gonna feel successful. That's the internal. When you're doing some shit that the success of this of the situation the whole world depends on. You into some different shit there. You're not gonna have as many people want to help you or support you or even know what the fuck you talking about or trying to do to begin with. All right. This is why it's that type of difference. So, but when you finally get there, like this, this is all right. So let's go. So then, return of consciousness, okay, to the absolute does not imply an extinction of the separate entity which the consciousness organized and sustained in reality. Rather, it suggests a differentiated consciousness which merges with and participates in the universal consciousness and infinity of the absolute without losing the separate identity and accumulated self-knowledge which its memories confer upon it. Okay, this is another graphic of the torus with the nucleus, the white hole, and the path, and then coming back to the black hole. Kind of looks like a nut or a tooth or all kinds of stuff, right? So what it does lose is the capability for generation of independent thought holograms, since that can only be done when energy is in motion. And see, and then my note here is that in the absolute is still, there is no choice or free will due to the equilibrium of the pressure. Okay, so let me read that again now with that. What it does lose is the capability for generation of independent thought holograms, since that can be done only by energy in motion. In other words, it retains the power to perceive but loses the power of will or choice. In exchange, however, this consciousness participates in the all-knowing infinite continuum of consciousness, which is a characteristic of energy in the ever-present. Consequently, it is accurate to observe that when a person experiences an out-of-body state, he is in fact projecting that eternal spark of consciousness and memory, which constitutes the ultimate source of his identity, to let it play in and learn from dimensions both inside and outside, not of the body, but of time and space world, in which his physical component currently enjoys a short period of reality. So, to translate where I got the title from, Time is an Emotion, is that it's all those different ways you hear that, you know, we are the universe, or we are soul having a human experience. So that is the emotion. We are in this period of time. It is an emotion. Just like when you're sad, just like when you're angry, just like when you're whatever. That period of time, you would say you are experiencing that emotion. And then you go back to whatever would be your normal. Time is an emotion, because once we get through moving through reality, we go back to the stillness of the absolute or the infinite. And it's still because it's so full and all filling up everything, omnipresence, that there's no free will or choice. So time is an emotion. All right, that's where I want to stop for on the document. But let's go over this. I just want to review this card number real quick, so you can see how amazingly this portion of it, how it ties together with this here. I'll put this on the screen for you so you can see, and I'll read out of the book. Because what I want to focus on is really the second part of it. So you see the card, you see how it's nut or nuit, however you want to say it, and it's considering that the world card. So your world is definitely affected by these dimensions beyond our current perceived reality. All right. So as a temporary vibration, right? 21, which is the world card. 21, as you can see, XX1 up there. A temporary vibration is it's travel, change, reward, success, and new worlds. Okay. Now think about everything we just talked about. These accessing these new dimensions, all the stuff that comes with that. Do you have to travel far to get there, or are you going to move closer and travel the same distance, spend more time there? All this stuff we just talked about. For those people that want to say, you know, astrology is foolishness or numerology is the work of the devil, and then they go talking about, but you trust science, don't you? Get right? They don't. Anyway, so let's do this real quick. So, travel, change, reward, success, new worlds. So this is a very potent period in which the old order changes. I mean, think about what that's summarized in the document that we just went over. The old order changes, making way for the new. The newly revealed world offers ultimate realization of your plans. Again, the newly revealed world offers ultimate realization of your plans, hopes, and wishes. Therefore, do not overlook opportunities that arise now. Arise. Higher vibrations. Anuit. Sky goddess. Arise. This is why people like me and some of you say we were put here to aid humanity in the ascension process. Arising. That's why we're the outcast. Embrace it. So plans already in progress may come to successful completion with accompanying rewards. Those plans still in the thinking stages should be carried out now. Remember, it was talking about the thought and then transferring it over into action. So, as the potential for success is high in this period. What period? And what's a period? Time. Time is an emotion. So let's read that again. Those plans still in the thinking stages should be carried out now, as the potential for success is high in this time period, I'll add. You can accomplish what you desire. How? By tapping into the source. But, you know, we're devil worshippers and, you know, practicing witchcraft and shit. So travel may be part of this cycle, and faraway places lure you. Like we just said, how far you gotta go outside of yourself to get to the fucking other dimensions? You so worried about, I might hurt my brain. Not you, but them. Yes, them, whoever they are. In the low vibration shit, you gotta go, you gotta arise into higher vibrations. Then you can travel into other dimensions. So let's read that sentence again. Travel may be a part of this cycle, and far away places lure you. The desires for freedom, self-expression, and pleasure urge you to look to distant places for fulfillment. A change of jobs. Yeah. So you working on going in here, you need to change that fucking job and start working on going in the atmosphere like Pasha been telling you. A change of jobs or residence, because you may be too far away. You got to get to that higher vibration. Why? So you have less distance to travel to get to that click-out point. But, you know, what do we know? We're just talking numerology here. So a change of jobs and or residence may result from your present thinking. The gift, the present thinking. Your subconscious is developing at a pace faster than usual during this period. You're damn right. It's moving faster than the fucking speed of light, right? That's what we just went over, right? And along with a growing sense of security and protection. Right? When you feel more secure, once you tap into the real you instead of the fake temporary flesh you that's all poisoned and toxified up with the world elements, when you feel better. Many marriages take place under 21/3. Mental or physical investments made here bear fruit. Mental or physical investments made here. So when you put your mind into that other dimensions and do the work and get in there and do the work, there is one place you have not looked, and it is there, only there, you shall find the master. Come on, man. Think I'll just be baby bullshit. That's why they want to say quotes about, oh, anybody can make a YouTube video. Yeah, but you ain't making these type of YouTube videos. Don't insult my intelligence because you ain't got none. That's what you need to tell those people. Don't think I'm wasting life because you are. So here we go. So those who react negatively must guard against losing emotional control. Remember, time is the emotion. So when you're not in control of the emotion of time, that's why you got to sit there and time out for fucking 5 hours meditating. I'm just giving it to you how it's real. Okay, so they see family responsibilities as burdens. You can free yourself from that shit. Family ain't nothing but people. If they don't fuck with you, don't fuck with them. The fuck? Why you gotta feel a burden? So they experience delays and restrictions and neglect to grasp offered opportunities because they're too busy dealing with burdens of the crashing waves on the surface instead of getting in the atmosphere, dealing with the equation. Legal counsel should be employed in business dealings because material loss is possible. Yeah. Because if you don't interact properly with your higher selves, you're actually decomposing more rapidly because you're not tapped into the source energy to keep your whole self energetic. For you, this period is one of reward. Realize that the opportunities opening for you now can fulfill your future dreams. So realize the opportunities opening for you now. Realize that when you open up the other dimensions, it's going to bring you greatness in all that you want to do in your future goals and dreams because you're going to be tapped into the source. You know what I'm saying? It's going to better your relationships because you're going to get rid of the fucking incomplete people because they're just toxic and they don't realize it because they're surrounded by other toxic people who glorify toxicity, and that's why they celebrate each other. Okay? Remember the World card. Time is an emotion. I guess I'll make that the title. Big shout out to the Nefertari deck for having Nut as the World card, or Knew It. I'm Pasha Paroh, YNS7. Thank you for tuning.